Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I am your host, Chad Hufford, and this is the podcast where we celebrate the unsung heroes of the working world. Each week, we dive into the incredible stories of honest, hardworking folks who have found financial success through grit, determination, and good old-fashioned elbow grease. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn how to turn your hard work into your own success story, you're in the right place. This is the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. Logan, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Blue Collar Millionaire Show, where we empower you, ordinary everyday people, to accomplish amazing things and ultimately a work optional lifestyle and a life of abundance. I'm here with Logan, and we're going to be going through my book, Forging Financial Freedom, and taking some of the nuggets out from that so you guys can apply them to your everyday life and get the benefit that many men and women have already gleaned as they've taken actionable pieces of the wisdom and principles that we teach and applied them to their own financial path.
So Chad, we've gone through a couple chapters already of the book, Forging Financial Freedom. So we're at chapter 3, which is framing your future. You start off with a really humorous but powerful example of what it looks like to not have a blueprint and not have a blueprint that you're following when it comes to a house. Of course, how that ties in with finances. Explain for those listening, what did that look like?
So for those of you who don't know, Logan is my brother, and I don't know, do you remember the house next door?
I do. Called it the Castle House.
When we moved in 1990, they had lumber and plywood sitting outside. So this is before you were born, sitting outside what was left of the previous house, because it had been leveled in a terrible windstorm when they were building it the first time. And for years, all they did was accumulate tools and materials. And then sure enough, another storm would come through and blow those materials everywhere. And it took years before they ever really even started on the construction. But even when did you ever walk through the house when it was quote unquote finished?
No, but I remember seeing the outside, and it was just, there'd be a wall here, then there'd be another wall here, then there'd be a room. And it was just a mishmash of,
it was piecemeal. And it was even worse inside of it, to the point where I actually walked through that with a friend of mine, because we're looking at, is there potential to buy this? The price seemed right, but it was so bad. The way it was compartmentalized, there was no flow. Everything in there felt like an afterthought. And to the point where it was so bad that the people who eventually bought it had to tear down the entire thing. There was nothing solid. They tore it down, even tore up the foundation. And nobody would buy a house knowingly built without a blueprint. But so often we plan our futures, especially our financial futures, without one. And I think the issue, or one of the big issues, is people who are diligent and disciplined enough to save don't technically invest. They spend 30 years collecting investments, and then they try to put it together in a financial house right before they retire. But meanwhile, every time a storm hits, all those tools and materials seem to just get blown to bits. There's nothing holding them cohesively together. And as we go through a lot of financial storms, we go through personal storms, and we need to have something tying that together, directing all our various investments to a long-term plan, so we aren't just collecting investments for 30 years. There's a world of difference between somebody who's strategically building towards a desired future and somebody who is merely collecting investments. And a financial blueprint, a financial plan, helps guide those saving and investing decisions along the way, so you're working on something rather than reacting to something.
Something that was a common thread, lots of the folks that you interviewed, some of the folks that I interviewed for the book, oil field professionals, basically a lot of them saying the same thing in terms of, when it comes to investing, I save as much as I can. I hope it's enough. And you broke down in the book, there's two huge risks that can come from that. Unpack that a little bit. If you're hoping it's enough, if that's your plan, what can go wrong?
Hope is great for Hallmark cards. It's a terrible financial strategy. And there's not a lot of security that comes with, I hope I've done enough. You should know there is a strategic, specific number that everybody has. Is a big part of what we do, is help people find the amount of invested capital that they need to retire and remain comfortably retired for a very long time. But if you don't know what that number is, there's always more. You can always move the goalposts. There's no referee in investing that when you get across the goal line, put up their hand, say, score, you made it, It doesn't exist. So for people who are really diligent, it's easy to continue pushing and to move the goal line or the goal post further and further out, because without a strategy, without a number for enough, knowing what that target is, you feel a lot of anxiety, maybe even frustration, a lot of fear. So it's just easier to, I'll just work another year, work another year. The other thing too is it can be hard to balance in the moment because you don't know how much you need to save every month. So the beauty of having a long-term tangible goal is being able to break down that big number, whatever your target is. Let's say it's $3 million. That $3 million target might mean you need to save an extra $500 a month. And that's, again, that's what Financial Blueprint does. It takes that long-term goal, just like you've got this architectural rendering of a house. What a physical blueprint does is it breaks that down into a step-by-step process. Here's what we need to start doing, starting with the foundation, to actually have this house built in a reasonable amount of time. Financial Blueprint does the same thing. It reverse engineers the finished product to where you are today. It basically, Logan, it brings the future into the moment. So number one, people know what they're doing, but also this huge goal of finishing this financial house gets broken down into steps. And those steps might still be a challenge. Again, let's just throw out a number. Say somebody needs $3 million to retire comfortably. That might seem overwhelming, but that might mean that, okay, they need to save an extra $600 this month, more than they normally. That might be a big stretch, but it's finite. And
it is something to work to.
And now every day matters. Because Logan, if I tell you need $3 million to retire comfortably, that really sounds like future Logan's problem. If I say you need to save an extra $600 this month, that's $20 a day. Every single day matters. And it might be a challenge. It might be a stretch, but it isn't this constant, I need to save more. And there's a finite amount that you need to save, and then that month is a win. So when you are able to hit that, it might take a while to get your budget in place. Maybe you've got to sell some stuff to eliminate some debt. Maybe just pay off your debt, change your lifestyle a little bit. It might not happen all at once, but once you get there, when you hit that number, you can also enjoy the moment. You're not putting everything on pause, living under a bridge to build your financial future where your kids are eating nothing but top ramen. You can find this balance in, okay, we've paid our future selves this month. It's in our budget. Now we can enjoy some of the things that we want in the moment. So you're not sacrificing your future for the present. You're also not sacrificing your present for the future. It's getting those two to connect. That blueprint, your financial plan, that is the bridge.
There's a couple things that come to mind when you say that. Is number one, I can't just let myself off the hook, to your point about maybe it creates urgency. So it makes it tangible, but also makes it
Everyday
sense
matters.
of urgency. But yeah, it can't just be future meets problem. Okay, I hope I win the lottery, or I hope I get an inheritance. That's kind of morbid. But the other thing too is it actually gives me hope, because if I know, to use your example, if I know I need to save $20 a day, $600 a month, right? 300 paycheck, whatever. Now it actually gives value to saving $20 a day. Because otherwise it feels like if I don't get Starbucks and I don't get McDonald's,
What difference does it make?
exactly. But what you're saying is that actually might be the difference between me, if I do that every day, being a multimillionaire and retiring and having financial freedom. So
just think like this. I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and we basically came down to their car was costing them their retirement.
wow.
The difference between what they were doing and where they needed to be in the future was a car payment.
The car payment itself, and
That was the difference.
this? Okay, just on the other side of the ledger.
Yep.
Wow.
So if they drove a paid for a car, that difference in what they were putting towards sending a bank every month instead of sending their future, that would be the difference. But without a financial blueprint, you don't know. And the car doesn't seem to be costing you that much. The car is only costing you $700 a month or whatever the thing is. But if that is holding you back from fully funding your retirement plan, your work optional life, you're never going to know that unless you actually have a strategy.
Okay, so in that right there is one thing I wanted to touch on, because these things are unique to different people, right? It's not a one size fits all.
Everybody has a different financial number.
Yeah, for somebody, maybe it's $600 a month, because saving that much money is what's going to get them to where they need to go. Somebody else, it might be $1,200. Somebody else, it might be $400, depending on where they started, whatever. But it's going to be something tailored to, based on your goals, based on how much you already have saved. This is what you're going to need. And we have a tool called Find Your Number.
Real quick before we get to that. And the answer isn't always more and more. I had a meeting with an oil field worker just a few days ago, and I got to give him really good news that, hey, you're ahead of schedule.
Wow.
And the guy he makes really good money, just paid off his house. He's absolutely crushing it, driving a 25-year-old truck. And I was like, do you want to buy yourself a new truck? He's like, maybe. But I was trying to talking through, and we actually found ways. This probably sounds bad coming from a financial planner, but for him to spend some of this money now in a way that's enjoyable. Just had a new baby too, and there's a lot that's changed in your life recently. But think about, what are some of the things that you want to do right now that with the money that used to be set to the future? And so this does cut both ways. And sometimes simply changing how you're investing. You might be saving enough. You're just investing it the wrong way. You're putting in the wrong vehicles. You've got enough vehicles on the road. They're just going the wrong direction, to switch metaphors.
Yeah.
But to your question though, about, yes, we have a tool and we call it the Find Your Number tool. Everybody has a strategic target. And sometimes, like building a house, as you start building, your goals change, the number might evolve. But going back to this concept and this state of mind where you have a strategic target all the time, even if that target needs to evolve and you revise and recalibrate the blueprint, that's okay. My wife and I did that when we were building our house now. We had ideas for what we thought we wanted in that house, the layout, all those things. The only thing that survived the initial plan was the flooring.
Yeah.
Cabinets, countertops, tile, all that stuff, including the floor plan changed. In fact, changed so much, some of the people working on this house didn't even recognize it, even though we'd taken another blueprint and just modified it from another house that had been built for some friends of ours. They didn't recognize it because it had changed so much. Point being, this is a fluid process. Planning is not something you do once. It's an ongoing thing. But your blueprint always takes your attention, points in the future. And this target, find your number. It's hard to hit a target you can't see. So that really, for a lot of people, that's the beginning of this process, Logan. And we have on our website, it's Find Your
We'll
Number.
put a link in the show notes as well.
Yeah. And it starts the process of where you need to be. And then we figure out how to reverse engineer it to break it down into yearly goals, monthly goals, bring that future target all the way into this moment.
And I love the breakdown. I think it's essential because I think there's probably a lot of people out there where even just to get to the one point where, let's say, again, it's $3 million that they need to have saved. That's their big number. For some people, that is something they never knew, right? They just, maybe I need $1 million. Maybe I need $10 million. I don't know. I just need money. So to know, okay, I need 3 million, but like you're saying, that can very quickly become overwhelming and suffocating if you don't know what it looks like a daily or monthly level.
So a couple of things on that. Number one, I think for a lot, $1 million sounds like a lot. And it's not insignificant, but if you don't have other sources of income, you might not be broke on a park bench, but it doesn't go super far in living a life of freedom and independence. And it's easy to set your goals too low. But the other thing too is just fighting against overwhelm. I can tell you, just as we're sitting here staring at this book, that same stuff that you talked about, like what difference does it make if I make this sacrifice, if I do this thing? It feels like throwing rocks in the Grand Canyon. There were times with this book where it was very much the same way. I was overwhelmed and I had to go back to my own philosophies and apply them to this book. What does it look like today? What do I need to accomplish today in order for today to be a win, to keep me on track? Because it was overwhelming. It felt like, okay, if I write for an hour or if I put 500 words on paper and my lovely editor might cut that down into 100, it actually survived the editing process. Hillary, if you're listening, you were very gracious and patient with me. But again, like it was easy to start that spin with whatever I do today isn't going to make that big of a difference. I'll wait till tomorrow to write.
And so you did that. You made a win out of writing for an hour or writing 100 words? Or
I had to break it down because it was overwhelming. And I'll be honest, there were periods where I would go days and even a couple times weeks without writing because it was so overwhelming. It was, again, like throwing a pebble into the Grand Canyon. It's just what difference is today going to make? And I had to create a different kind of blueprint with different targets to bring that future project into the moment. So that moment mattered, that day mattered, that week mattered. And that's what our financial blueprint process does.
Okay, so one thing you mentioned in chapter 3 about framing your future is when a storm comes, what a lot of people do is they stop building. And what that looks like with investing is a storm comes, I'm going to stop investing. I'm going to wait until things calm down. I've got a couple questions along that. But the first one is what I can think of some risks, but what are some risks that happen if you wait until things calm down before you invest again?
Okay, let's go back to philosophical a little bit. There's never a convenient time to do hard things. There's never a convenient time between working in Veritas and raising 6 kids and volunteering the church. It wasn't like, oh, I have all this time today to write and I've got nothing better to do. It was never convenient.
Yeah.
I had to make it a part. I had to make it a discipline in my life. There's never going to be a convenient time for most people to build their financial house where they have so much money lying around that they can just invest it to the future. And maybe that does happen sometimes, but not normally. For the types of folks that we work with, they make good money, but they're very intentional with it. And there's always a storm cloud on the horizon. So just as we're recording this, we're in the middle of these tariff tantrums. When you're building a house, and this is what happened to our neighbors, like windstorms would come, literally scatter their building materials everywhere. They didn't have a plan. There's no way to organize it. So when a storm did come, there's no way to know if they were off course or not, because there really wasn't a course to begin with. The easiest thing to do is just not build and wait for sunshine. When the sunshine comes, you probably have to do something else that day.
Right.
And when it comes to investing, if you're not in the midst of the storm, there always is a storm cloud on the horizon. And the people on the news are always telling you that storm can shift. And so there's always something, and they're real, but we don't know how that storm is going to affect our financial house. And if you wait for the storm clouds to dissipate and nothing but blue skies, you'll never build. Because even if you're not in the midst of the storm, there's always something looming.
Yeah. The phrase "do the next right thing" that's huge. It's always been a huge theme for the last 10 years for me in my life. And I see it playing out in your book. Obviously, a big part of Jocko and extreme ownership and that kind of philosophy is there's always something to be done, right? There's always a next right thing. And what I hear you saying is if I don't have a plan, if I don't know where I'm heading, I don't know what the next right thing looks like, whether it's small or big, because I don't have a plan. I don't have anything mapped out. What are some like real, obviously you're not putting names out there, but what are some real life storms that have hit with clients, friends, like people that have been hit by storms, and how did they respond to that?
If we just go to something that affects everybody, whether it was the COVID decline, S&P 500 went down 34% in 33 days during the inflation scares back in 2022.
Go back to COVID real quick. Just for somebody like me that maybe I'm a little bit of a simpleton, break that down for me. So I've got $100,000 saved, and what happened in, you said 33 days?
In just over a month, that would have gone down to mid to high 60s.
So the value showing of what it was worth at that time.
The temporary value of your investments would have gone down by about a third in just over a month. It was the sharpest, fastest decline in the history of the S&P 500. And for a lot of people, that's what they call the stock market.
Right.
But you'd have to go back to 1929 or early 1930s for anything that was even a precedent for that. Most people alive today had never seen anything even close to that before. So that's something that affected a lot of people.
Right. That's a heck of a storm.
And it is a heck of a storm. And in 2022, we had another one. So we had inflation eating away at the value of our dollar while we had another major decline. They didn't go down as far, but it lasted a lot longer. And if we go back to 1980, the average decline for the broad market, let's use the S&P 500 as our token or our example here. The average intra-year decline is almost 15%. So even though most of those years are greatly positive, and during that time, that index has gone from 100 to right now about 6,000.
Wow.
But the average decline at some point in that year was about 15%. Sometimes it was a lot more, like 30. Right. A few times it was 50. So those are storms that affects everybody. But we also have a lot of personal storms. I've got somebody coming in next week who just lost her husband. We have somebody who retired recently who just very tragic family situation to totally change her retirement plans. Had people with major health risks, people getting cancer at a very young age. And a financial blueprint doesn't solve those things, but it does give you I think some clarity in what your path is to get back on track, and also a sense of agency. Because another thing about waiting for the storms to pass is you're sitting waiting for an outside, environmental, an outside variable to change your circumstances.
Yeah.
A financial blueprint is what you said, is looking for what is the next action towards my long-term goal. And sometimes if those storms are personal, a lot of times those storms are personal. It could be a divorce, it could be the health issue for a child. You do have to recalibrate. Maybe you're not able to save as much. You have to extend your timeline for finishing your financial house. But the point is, you're always acting towards something, not reacting to something.
Right. And so one of the ways that you end this chapter, I want to wrap up with this, is the idea. You hinted at it earlier, but when enough is enough. Because I think people probably have the idea that a financial advisor wants you to save more and more money, right? And just build up your investments as big as possible. And as we said, maybe some people do need to do more of the saving, a lot of people. But it's not just save more just because. You have a really powerful example of an oil field professional that you interviewed for this book who talked about one of his, or maybe his biggest regret in his career. Share a little bit about that.
His biggest regret from a financial standpoint was I sacrificed more than I needed to. And he told me, he said, I've got more money now than I ever thought I would have. And smart guy, but doesn't have a huge formal education, very hard worker, very ambitious, obviously very skilled, but never thought he would be at this place financially in life. So he have more money than I ever thought I would have. And I've got nobody to share it with. And too often I meet people in their 60s who spent their 30s and 40s and 50s trading away their health and their relationships, maybe even their faith, to build wealth. And then they get to be 60 or 65 or 70, and they're trying to use their wealth to buy back their health and their relationships and time. And you have to build those things in balance, because our goal for people is to use money as a tool to build a life of freedom and abundance. And abundance doesn't mean dying on a bigger pile of money.
Right.
It means being able to chase the things that are most important to you and that make your heart come alive. There's no equation for that. But if we can get people to enough, and that is something that some of the wealthiest people in the world will never have, is enough. But being able to get people to a point where they can realize, okay, I never need a paycheck ever again. That is unbelievably powerful. And now wealth can actually set people free, because without knowing when enough is, wealth can actually hold you captive.
I love the way that you're flipping it on its head. And it's a little bit of a teaser. Next time, we're going to be talking about a few key words that everybody's going to know these words. And yet these words get used in the exact opposite way of what they really actually mean. Some things we look at as the villain, and they might actually be a hero. Some other words, they're actually the reverse of that. So look forward to having that conversation. Guys, make sure you tune in to that episode. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. We hope this episode has been inspiring and beneficial to you. If you want help on your journey to financial freedom, reach out to us at veritasalaska.com. We'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, either here in our office or virtually, and get to know you and your needs. And though this podcast is free of charge, we do ask that you please do us two quick favors. If you enjoyed the episode, give our pod a great rating on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use, and also give us a follow on Instagram. We hope you have a wonderful day filled with gratitude and intentionality. God bless.